Good evening, Canby. Welcome to the August 3rd, can you believe it's August already? August 3rd, Canby Urban Renewal Agency meeting. Going to call the meeting order at 6 o'clock. Our second item on the agenda is citizen input and community announcements. And we have Carol Palmer to speak to us, and she's been given extra time from Judy Zettergren and Deborah Grochol. And you know what, Carol? I always like what you have to say, so take all the time you need.
Oh, in that case.
Am I on? Of course, I'm missing something here. Okay, is the mic on?
Yep.
Cool. Okay, so I'm here today to talk to you about the facade improvement request that you have in front of you. And first of all, I want you to know that I totally support this. It's much needed, and I think it's a good idea. So this is not about opposition. It's about some concerns I had when I actually looked up the address. And one of my concerns is, well, first of all, it's in the 2009 Cultural Resource Survey that was done of the downtown area in 2009. There's some information here that I provided to you that isn't in the staff report, but I think it's important to know that this building is in an area that's a recommended historic district. And so that additional information, plus knowing when it was built, plus knowing how it was rated, I think is something to take into consideration anytime there's a facade improvement request in that particular area. And I gave you a little bit of some information, just basic reminder of what is a cultural resource survey, what do they do in that little box, and I'm not going to go through that. But I do want to say that there's about 5 or 6 pages of attachments. The first one, it's actually your page 3 in the packet, is actually I took from the 2009 survey, and it includes this particular site. So you can see what was written. Not all of the analysis, this is just one page, but it gives you a feel for what those look like. And then the next 5 pages I pulled out of a 51-page RLS we just got on Monday at the HLC meeting. And these are just 5 pages where I thought it would give you a feel for, so what do these things do? What do they look like? What kind of analysis do we get? What kind of information? So if you have any questions about those, feel free. One of the things I'm very concerned about is that the 2009 RLS is way out of date. Canby has not stood still since 2009, as all of you know. Much has changed. 9 of the properties identified in that survey as being not in period have now aged in. 1970 was a hot year for building, let me tell you. Key Bank is a good example. Multiple properties have been altered. The analysis and recommendations are now kind of suspect. We need to have another look, another see to see exactly what we've got here and what we can do. And also sort of the state of the profession has changed. So what we're getting now in the new surveys that we're getting, the last 2 in particular, is we're getting not only the information about each individual property, the analysis, the feedback, but we're also getting things like I think a better presentation, a better understanding, and certainly the mapping that's now being done, the GIS layers have been incredibly informative. And those, I've got 2 examples of those in the packet for you to see. Those are of the survey that was done of the northwest and the northeast neighborhood that's close in. So you can get a feel for those. So I'm here basically asking for money. We need an updated survey of downtown. And we could, of course, do that. The city could with the Certified Local Government Grant, but that program doesn't reopen until next year. And the timing and the things that go into that are such that we probably wouldn't have a report until best case would be second quarter of 2024. And my concern is, why shouldn't we delay, is because I think there's a window of opportunity open at this time. We've got some threats we're facing in terms of development. I mean, we're seeing that happen so quickly. Alterations that could take place. And I think we've got some good opportunities that we didn't have 8 years ago. New owners, new energy downtown. I can tell you that when I was talking to property owners 8 years ago about this, I got indifference or in some cases hostility. And I think some of that has changed. I think we have an opportunity to really take a look at, can we get a historic district? Ultimately, the property owners will decide. In terms of opportunities now, in addition to that, you might not know this, but the Heritage and Landmark Commission is working on a packet, an FAQ packet that can be handed out to property owners to give them more information about what a National Registry nomination means. And also, somewhere in the next 60 to 90 days, there's going to be an open house. Mary Hanlon will have the new City Hall ready, the old City Hall in its new form ready. And I think that's going to be sort of an inspiration for folks that own some of these buildings, because they've done a really careful job. I don't know if you know it, but the original front door has been recovered and is being returned and put on that building, which is like a huge win. That's a great thing. So yeah, I think it's going to be really fun. So what is the value of a historic district over a single property listing? One application, everybody in the district who has a property that's rated eligible or contributing is automatically on the National Registry. Why is a National Registry nomination important? Well, from a property owner standpoint, there's a property tax program that's a state program. There's a federal income tax program that's has a lot of strings because it's a federal income tax program, but it's there. But it also gives those property owners access to grants that are limited to National Registry properties. Right here in Oregon, we've got the Preserve Oregon grant that's overseen by the Oregon Heritage Commission, and that money is dedicated to National Registry properties. The Kinsman grant gives priority to National Registry projects. And so I've tried to show you the money. How much does that mean in just those two grant programs alone that could be available to some of our property owners downtown? I think if we do go forward, one of the things that bothers me sometimes about these kind of studies is that the consultants tend to look in their own bubble and not connect to the other maybe studies that have been done. And one of the things I think I would recommend that we would request is that whoever we hire to do this would be also asked to connect the dots with that 2019 downtown plan that was put together. There was a lot of great information in that, and I think if we had a historic preservation view and sort of tried to combine those thoughts, I think we could get some really good results out of that. And I know there's a thought that what historic preservation is about keeping things looking the way they were, but there's also, and the very last page in there, I took two really good examples from Milton Freewater and from Woodburn to show you the kinds of things that can be done with a historic property that don't necessarily make it look weathered and aged and old, but make it attractive for people and to increase the attractiveness of our downtown. That's it. Yes.
Great, thank you. Questions?
Thank you, Chair. Carol, thank you very much for the information that you sent to us. I really do appreciate that. And I guess my question is, has the Historic Landmark Commission done much work yet on, or continued work on this part of downtown that you're talking about in terms of kind of a historic district or historic designation?
Yeah, well, we started that back about in 2015. That was really the path that I was on at that point in time. I had connected with Rosemary Johnson, who is the planning director, she was the planning director for Astoria, and she had made it her mission to turn Astoria into a heritage district, and it certainly is if you've been there recently. She gave me some great ideas. We actually, at one of our historic review or heritage landmark commissions, she came and she didn't come. She was on the telephone and did a presentation to our commission at that time and gave us some great ideas. But when we went out and started talking to people, we realized that there wasn't that interest out there. And part of it was we had a lot of absentee owners. We had some property owners in town that were seeing their buildings as being savings accounts that could be passed on to the next generation. It was all good stuff. There was also a lot of concern about the things that have happened in Aurora and how some of the businesses there have been treated. And I think I understand that totally. I'm hoping that we are never in that kind of situation. So yes, we turned around from that and said, okay, what we need to do instead is more education, more outreach. And that's when we turned and said, let's do a heritage trail. Let's do some programs like the Women's Heritage Trail. So we really turned to that instead of going straight at the historic district. But I think now we're in a different place at a different time, and we've been doing that education, we've been doing that outreach. Maybe we can get out there and get some. We only need 50% of the property owners. It has to be everybody in the historic district, whether they have a historic property or not. So everybody gets a say, and 50% have to agree before it can become a historic district. And so that could be a challenge. And what we're talking about at this moment in time is just First Street. So from Elm to Holly. So 3 blocks.
Thank you.
Did that really answer your question? I think it did.
It does, yeah, I just, again, I think more just to get the ball rolling. I think having that committee maybe start putting some work into it as
Yes.
well to help us get to a point where I think we can make a definite, move or recommendation to, for a dollar expenditure, I think would be ideal. But that's why I asked just the work that's been done at that committee level so far.
Well, I know Judy is working right now with Northwest Vernacular on, again, that packet that we can start handing out to people, to property owners, about answering those questions that they have, like, do I have to hold an open house every year? And the answer to that is no. But there's a lot of mythology out there, so we're going to try and get the facts in front of folks that hopefully will help them make those decisions easier.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I think would definitely be a win for Canby and our downtown for sure. So thank you for that.
Commissioner Hensley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Carol. This was a very good presentation. I love the information. I love the idea and going forward. But I just wanted to kind of circle back and confirm you don't have any concerns or issues with the facade improvement for us tonight?
No, none.
Okay.
None. This was just a chance to take advantage of that and remind all of you.
No, that's perfect.
That we could use some money and that you've got a real good opportunity down there, and please don't mess it up.
Very good.
That's sort of my message.
Duly noted. Thank you.
That is a promise I don't know if we can make, but we will do our best, right? Commissioner Spoon.
Thank you, Carol. I always appreciate how you apply a really thoughtful lens on everything and you come prepared to give us information so we can be action oriented. So I really appreciate that and value the work that you put in before you come to us. I'm all for going down this path and putting in the money to do this study for First Avenue. I think as we have become more of a tourist destination and we start to look to provide more recreational opportunities, food and beverage downtown, I think it behooves us to really explore this as an opportunity. My question is really more policy based, which is this? Is this a URA expense? Is it another expense? Kind of where does this expense land? And I'm not sure that that's, I'm not as concerned with where it lands. I just think we should ask the question of where how we pay for it. But as far as supporting an initiative like this, I'm definitely behind it. I'm not convinced it's a URA project, is I guess what I'm saying, but I'm not opposed to it being a URA project. I just think that's another conversation we should have.
Scott, do you have any comments on that?
Well, yeah, that's a good point. If it's the will of this agency and then perhaps the city council, if it's a council or a city effort, but I will work with staff and we'll take a look at some funding opportunities that we might have. I think we've got some opportunities that exist. I don't know, Carol, if you have any, even just a ballpark on what a survey might cost, but either way, even if you don't, that's okay. We'll take a look and we'll come back with some information.
Well, I think the looking at where some of those funding options could come from would kind of dictate whether it's a URA or a council decision. So that'd be great.
Carol, what you emailed us said it would be like $5,000 to $6,000.
Yeah,
right?
the one that was just completed for the 159 properties in the northeast, northwest neighborhoods, that came in at 9,000. This is about 76 properties. So I think 5,000 to 6,000 will get us that. So it wasn't a huge spend, but there's a lot to be gained out of it.
So we'll definitely, we'll work with something in that range and we'll take a look at our options and report back appropriately.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right. And then Aaron Walker.
Thank you. I don't attend regularly, but I'm here tonight and would like to comment because my husband and I own a couple of properties on First Avenue, which would fall within the historic district. And of course, I have several concerns with projects like this. Although I do agree that Canby is very beautiful downtown and there are a lot of historic qualities that naturally come out within the architecture of the buildings downtown. It is lovely to walk downtown. There is a lot of traffic down there, and I sincerely appreciate that because it's very good for business. However, considering the businesses that are between Elm and Ivy or Holly Street, you have Canby Rental, which is pretty near a dilapidated building, and the question about historic preservation of buildings that are needing to be maybe completely gutted or rehashed altogether. I would raise concerns because we don't want to get in the way, perhaps, of businesses moving in and providing new life to downtown, because there's yet another hoop to jump through about preserving the historic nature of buildings. So that is my concern, is that although I think it is lovely to preserve history, making sure that there may be a point to that where the costs are taken into account of what it would take to preserve history versus the benefits, and that the owners of the building are brought into those discussions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. All right. I don't have anybody else unless there's anybody that wants to speak on the matter. All right. We will move into our consent agenda.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda, which includes the minutes from the May 4th, 2022 URA work session, as well as the minutes from the May 18th, 2022 URA meeting.
Second.
All right, it has been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. New business, item number 4 is the facade improvement program application. And we have Mr. Nizer.
All right. Good evening, Urban Renewal Agency. While I have met most of each of you, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Tyler Nizer. I am the Economic Development and Tourism Coordinator for the City of Canby, and I have been here for 6 months. And you may have seen me in some of my efforts with the Canby Independence Day celebration and the First Thursday Night Market. And tonight I'm with you guys for the facade improvement program. Specifically, the 426 and 428 Northwest First Avenue property, which will grant up to $25,000. The applicant requests for, and this actual property was, you may have remembered as the old liquor store and appliance store, and it is, the new owners are Brant and Aaron Walker, and they would like to replace the single pane windows with dark bronze storefront and insulated low E-glass. And low E-glass is low emissivity or low emittance, which minimalizes the amount of ultraviolet and infrared light. They would also like to replace the double doors with new storefront doors and panic devices, and replace the glass in the broken small window. And a little bit of background for this particular program. Since 2010, the Canby Urban Renewal Agency has funded construction grants of up to $25,000 to encourage private investment within the Canby's Urban Renewal District. The facade improvement program partners with property owners and business to make improvements to the exterior buildings clearly visible from the street. This partnership helps the Canby Business District revitalize and become more inviting to tenants, customers, and residents. This program has been successfully generating design improvements at approximately 3 properties per year in downtown Canby and along Highway 998. And Brant Walker and Aaron, who are owners of Canby Property LLC, located in downtown Canby at 426 and 428 Northwest First Avenue, have this application for the side of the building that it can be seen from Northwest First Avenue, which is the front of the building. The application was sent to the Main Street Design Committee for comments, and I will share with you some of those comments here. The first one being, this looks to be a great improvement, especially at the west end of First Avenue. I definitely approve of this application. This works for me. Anything is better than now. Would like to see more. And another, thanks for sharing this. I have some concerns, but I will not oppose the project. However, I will be using it as a means to address the URA committee on the need for an updated updated survey and to remind them of potential for a National Historic District in the original town site. And I believe that individual shared those with the Deputy City Recorder and shared those with you tonight. And included in your packet are the photos and contractor bids for the project. And at this time, I would like to invite Erin up to share any specifics with the project, any specific details that you might have, and questions.
Thank you, Tyler. Thank you, committee, for having me this evening. Just as Tyler said, we are we'd like to replace the glass and the doors, both for sun protection for the individuals inside, and then also for safety, of course. And as you all know, the train goes right by that building, and so having a little more of a barrier for that noise would be lovely. We would like to do more to the front of the building, but we are in a bit of a time crunch. And so we would like to add an awning at the top and some signage, but due to delays in manufacturing right now, the best we can do is the windows and the doors. So thank you. Do you have any questions for me?
No, thank you for making the investment on that storefront.
Yeah, it's quite our pleasure and has been, I can't even tell you the amazing surprises that we found inside that building.
I can imagine.
But it's pretty incredible to see the transformation, and the inside has been coming along. It would be lovely to have that show up on the front, so.
Great.
Wonderful. Well, I'm excited to see the future of that property as well and what new comes to Canby from it. So, Commissioner Marine.
Can you, are those units vacant right now, or do you have tenants?
We have a tenant this past year, Academy, and they're starting up again in September. So we're trying to get everything done by September 6th. Yes.
Great.
And so the fiscal impact for the City of Canby is a matching grant of up to $25,000 from the Urban Renewal Agency. And there are two options for tonight. Is option one, approve the matching grant of up to $25,000 for the Canby Property LLC under the guidelines of the Canby Facade Improvement Program. And option two is to decline the matching grant of up to $25,000 for the Canby Property LLC under the guidelines of the Canby Facade Improvement Program. Staff recommends that the Urban Renewal Agency approve the allocation of matching grant funds for the Canby Property LLC and Facade Improvement Project.
Wonderful. Thank you. Any questions of staff? No? All right. Well, if anybody wants to make a motion, I'll entertain it.
I would like to approve the matching grant of up to $25,000 for Canby. Mike, I move to approve the matching grant of up to $25,000 for Canby Property LLC under the guidelines of the Canby Facade Improvement Program.
I'll second.
All right. It's been moved, seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, it passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you, Carol, for your information tonight as well. That is all the business that we have. So with that, I will take a motion to, Commissioner Smith.
Before we adjourn, I was just wondering if Scott could give us an update on where we might be with the mural program. I think we've missed this year in terms of getting murals painted on, but I would love for the committee to be in motion and maybe hit next year's dry season. So I was just kind of wondering if we could figure out where we're at with that.
We have had some conversations about getting that program started. Actually, Jamie and I have fairly recently talked about, I need to circle back on that and give you more recent update, but there are some things in motion, trying to get a committee together. So we're very much trying to move that forward, but I'll get you some better specifics on that. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
In that case, I move we adjourn.
All right. It's been moved, seconded, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. Good night, Canby. Thank you. We'll be back for the city council meeting in about an hour.
5 minutes for the work session.
Canby and council, it is August 3rd, 2022. And we are in a work session. I'll call to order our work session this evening. It's to discuss the park's maintenance fee in its current state and what we may want to do, any further action we would want to take regarding that. This is a work session for the council to discuss the topic at hand. Generally, the public is more than welcome to watch and tune in and attend the meeting, but in terms of comments and whatnot, either ask that you make those at the following council meeting or later when it comes up on the agenda here in the future. So I will turn it over to Mr. Archer, and which I suspect will then kick it over to staff to
Yes.
take us through this.
Exactly. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Good evening. And I'm going to ask Jeff Snyder to come up to the presentation table. And while Jeff's making his way up, I'll embarrass him for just a second. So Jeff, as you all know, has been with the city for quite a long time. He's served us very well, and he has most recently for a number of years been our parks lead. And just very recently, Jeff was promoted to public works supervisor role. So a higher level of responsibility. Yeah. So with that right out of the gate, we tell Jeff he gets to come up and give the council a presentation now that he's a supervisor. So
Well, we
That's
generally
how
do
that
that
goes.
around here. You promote people, then you immediately got to make
right.
a presentation.
That's right. So yes, we're very happy with that. It's part of our some internal movement within the public works staffing, also some succession planning and just part of our overall staffing plan. So really happy with that. But Mr. Snyder is going to give you the presentation about the parks fee. He's obviously as our parks lead and is still going to be involved with parks to a certain extent. We'll have a great amount of information on this. So we've got a PowerPoint for you. We've given you some hard copies of that. And with that, I'll just turn it over to Jeff.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thanks again for the kind words. Appreciate that. We're here this evening to discuss the park maintenance fee City Council work session. And I think we're already on slide 1. A little background here. City Council authorized the park maintenance fee in August of 17, Ordinance 1466, established the City Municipal Code Chapter 3.35 Park Maintenance Program, effective January 1st, 2018. Resolution 1274 implemented a park maintenance fee, adopted annual rate adjustment consumer price index for the Portland, Oregon MSA, effective January 2018, Ordinance 1505. Changed CPI from Portland, Oregon MSA discontinued to Pacific Cities effective July 1st, 2019. Little background. Residential units, there is hereby imposed upon.
I was trying to see. No, it's not on his either. Where the camera is?
Yeah, I'm just,
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be open on either computer.
okay.
No, it's fine.
We have hard copies.
We can move through it, that's okay.
So residential units, there is hereby imposed upon development residential units in the city an initial park maintenance fee of $5 for each dwelling unit existing on that parcel. Multiple family units, there is hereby imposed upon the responsible party for a multi-family unit an initial park maintenance fee equal to $5 for each separate dwelling unit within the multiple family unit existing on that parcel. By way of example, an apartment complex containing 30 units would be subject to a monthly park maintenance fee of $150. Non-residential units, there is hereby imposed upon the responsible party for a non-residential unit an initial park maintenance fee of $5 for each common meter to serve the non-residential unit existing on the parcel. Annual adjustment rates shall be made based upon the consumer price index. Park maintenance fee funds. City of Canby park employees hired with park maintenance fee. 2 full-time employees were hired with that fee. Park department increased 3,520 labor hours per year, 14,080 over the 4 years. Deferred maintenance project, Locust Street Park, pickleball courts, playground equipment, safety surfacing, and hardscaping at Legacy Park. Completed and future projects, Maple Street splash pad and pickleball courts, Locust Street Park covered picnic area. Locust Street basketball courts, excuse me. The Park and Rec Advisory Board recommended, on behalf of the City of Canby Park and Recreation Board, they recommended the continuation of the park maintenance fee until December 31st, 2027, and asked for your unanimous approval to ensure the exceptional level of park maintenance continues. And our process of the city, first reading, second reading, 30-day waiting period after we get to the city council. City council options. Allow park maintenance fee to sunset and supplement current budget with general fund monies, reduce service levels and personnel, extend current park maintenance fee for an additional 5 years as recommended by the Park and Rec Advisory Board indefinitely until Cappard or other park recreation district establish funding until expiration of the urban renewal district. City staff recommendations. City staff recommends extending the current park maintenance fee for an additional 5 years as recommended by the Park and Rec Advisory Board. Direct staff to bring park maintenance fee extension with an amended ordinance and resolution to the next city council meeting. And I am open for questions.
Jeff, a lot of the reason for the park maintenance fee was because we frankly just kind of fallen behind on park maintenance and things like that. A lot of that became deferred. In your experience so far, how have we, or how has you and your team been able to get caught up on some of that defer? Are we caught up? Or are we still kind of lagging behind?
You know, as we grow, you keep adding, it keeps adding workload. So you're probably never all the way caught up. We're probably at an acceptable level of maintenance. If you like what you see, we're not doing too bad, so.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Spoon.
Yeah, a couple of questions. Thank you for the presentation. I appreciate your work on the project. I know that it's been a long, I know, I was kind of looking at the three of you. I know it's been a long road to even get to this point, so I appreciate all the work you've put in and working with the Parks and Rec Board and other city staff. So I see the recommendation to extend until 2027. I'm not opposed to that. I was just kind of wondering, since we weren't in the meeting with the Parks and Rec Board where this recommendation was devised, what their reasoning was to choose that option as opposed to tying it to the closure of the URA or to the funding of Cappard or something like that. Just some insight into why that's where they landed. I don't oppose that. I'm just kind of curious what the thought process was. My preference has always been to tie it to the closing of the URA, but I'm not opposed to another solution.
I believe the consensus was that we wanted to be able to, in case other funding options came available, that we could dismiss it at that point. So by leaving it at a 5-year rate, we, bringing it back up for discussion if nothing happens within the next 5 years.
I think, and maybe this is a question for other city staff as well, like if there was a new funding option or if something changed and we no longer needed the park maintenance fee to both retain our level of maintenance and grow our park system on pace with population growth, we could always just end it no matter what. Even no matter what it was tied to, we don't have to wait the 5 years out. Like if we determine it's no longer needed from a policy level, we can always end it regardless of.
It's, yes, that is correct. It's created by, and if you extend it, you'd be extending it by ordinance, so that's always repealable. And yeah, I don't think there's much more complication than that.
We are in theory, on track to close the URA 2025, 2026.
Correct.
So this would actually extend it past
Yeah.
the length of the URA. Again, I'm not opposed to the recommendation. I see value in having some overlap, but I'm kind of surprised that the choice was to extend it further than we anticipate the URA closing, but I'm not, like I said, opposed to it. I think, I guess my question is, when whatever we work on eventually comes back to us as an ordinance, I would think it would be really helpful to have some clarity on what our intended use for the parks maintenance fee was. I think, Mayor Hodson and I have talked about this, and we kind of saw it one way in 2017, and some people on some of our advisory board saw it a different way, and we've never really have established clarity on, was the purpose of the parks maintenance fee to hire additional staff to catch up on park maintenance and give us more capacity for growth, or was the purpose of the park maintenance fee to do upgrades to the parks that may or may not qualify for SDCs? And I think having like a clear idea of where we're headed with the park maintenance fee would be really helpful. From my perspective, I don't know what the rest of council thinks, but I would love to see that as part of the conversation when we get to the ordinance phase, just because I think that there's been, sometimes everyone goes into something with their own idea, and none of them are wrong, but there's really no alignment in that sometimes. And I think that alignment would be really valuable from the beginning. So that would kind of be my ask as we head into the next phase. I'm not sold on 2027. I'm not opposed to 2027. I want to see the park maintenance fee continue. I'm open-minded to the discourse and other ideas on it.
I'll just add to the question about the 5 years versus the URA piece. Also part of that conversation was generally when you look at operating levies like the pool, the fire district and whatnot, those are all set in 5-year chunks. And the whole idea was to kind of keep with that thread to be able to say, here's what we said we were going to do. Here's what we did. Here we are. We're back, to say, hey, we want to continue this in this capacity. The URA closing, again, it's a conversation piece. We can add it to the list of conversations that need to be had at this group is if and when the URA closes and that money is then put into the general fund, we've had a lot of conversation about that money, and that money only goes so far. And so what is that, list, that infamous list out there that these funds go to? Because there's staff pieces that are tied to the URA that now go into the general fund that need to be paid for. There's other aspects that need to be paid for, and it doesn't necessarily mean that the money that from the closing of the URA is going to be able to cover all of that wish list and then also parks pieces. So I think the conversation being, like with the language of the recommendation, was if that's the case and the URA closes and it's able to meet the needs of the parks and that's the priority, then we can do away with the park maintenance fee short of the 5-year mark or not. So, Councilor Spooner.
Yeah, I that makes a lot of sense to me, and I can get behind that. I guess my hesitation is there have in the past been conversations about, well, we can't really add capacity to our park system despite the fact that our population growth has grossly outpaced park development because we have a firm deadline. We have an end date on the park maintenance fee, and until we have funding in perpetuity, there are people that are opposed to growing our parks program. And I don't want this finite end date to be, if I can get on board with it, but I want to get on board with it with the understanding as a group that because it ends, that's not a reason to not grow our park system. And that's my concern, because that has been an argument in the past. Well, we can't add parks to the system because the park maintenance fee has an end date. Okay, but then when we ask for a potential solution that has an end date that directly ties to an increase in general fund money, well, that's not the right answer either. And I just don't want to see, if we can agree on a 5-year end date, that be then weaponized to not grow the parks program, right? Because I think when we initially passed this, the goal for all of us was to eventually grow the parks program. I believe that's a vision of this council. I just don't want a firm end date to the park maintenance fee to be a barrier to that.
Well, and I would also say to that, I mean, even if that were a dialogue, I mean, I think we've added capacity over the last 4 years in our parks, even with tackling the deferred maintenance piece. You look at what we've done at Maple Street Park, what we've done at Locust Street Park. Those are within that deferred maintenance piece was replacing features and amenities to, one, repair them and improve the park, but expand capacity outside of the SDC piece. So I think that may have been a conversation piece, but I think our actions as a council and a parks board, it says something different than that. And then as we look at the parks master plan coming to us here soon, you know, there's a lot of like immediate action that wants to be taken by the Parks Advisory Board and based on what we've all talked about from this group. So I think we're at that point where, I mean, expansion and growth is going to happen because we have grown so much. And I mean, you know, we could extend it indefinitely, you know, and set a cap if that's what we want to do. I mean, that's why I think Jeff listed indefinitely, you know, what that would look like. So
It's an option.
it's an option, for sure.
Back to the question then of what's the purpose of it? Is it additional staff? Is it, you know, facilities? What is it? And I think maybe that's part of that conversation then. That's really helpful.
Councilor Marine.
I'm of the opinion that we probably should do it indefinitely. I mean, the need for maintenance isn't going to go away. And since we have the ability to make adjustments going forward, if the money is just growing, just sitting there, we don't need it, we can just stop it. But, I mean, to go through this exercise every 5 years doesn't seem like it's really necessary. I'd rather just keep it going.
Okay. Gregory. Councilor Parker, you.
I'd be open to having that language brought back as well for us to have a full discussion at the next city council meeting. On the URA funds, Scott, I don't think my sidebar discussion that I've had with the finance director has been passed along to the entire council on his projections for what the income will be to the city at the expiration. Has anyone else seen those numbers? So I think that's a discussion we should have. Is Eric has some now preliminary projections, but I think that needs to be held within the context of what do we see as the rate of inflation, growth in our employees, and that type of thing. It's a broader picture. I don't want us just to think that money is going to be showering from heaven when the URA goes away. That Eric has, he thinks he has a pretty good handle on it, hasn't had a lot of experience in the URA, but from a budgetary manner, he was able to extract some information, but I'm going to let the city administrator work with him and bring us back a formal memo on that. But I think that's the beginning, is how much are we going to get once the URA closes? Because we've been talking about this for 12 years, that magic day when that happens. But I don't know if we've ever been presented with a number. Have we, Tracy?
I haven't seen the numbers.
So that's a number we need to have. And then Sarah's absolutely right on this. I mean, one of the questions I had of staff was, if we continue the park maintenance fee, are we going to be able to expand staff? Because I think we've sort of got this situation where we're not going to expand substantially our parks without being able to match it with maintenance. So it's a case of approximation when we get the recommendations from the Parks Committee on things that they'd like to tackle in the next couple of years. What are the next 2 to 3 parks that are come on board? And then what are the hours? And if there's a mismatch, how do we address that? I really would hate us to be in a situation where we have to pull the brakes on park expansion when we have money in the bank to build these things if we can't find a funding. So for now, this is an interim solution. And I would support Councilor Marine's suggestion of bringing back language, extending it 5 years. I do want to acknowledge my colleague's position of that there is position on the council, 1 or more people, of thinking this should be a referral type of thing. I don't know if there's enough votes to carry that or not, but I think that's part of the discussion that we would have as well. But I don't see a problem as long as we're able to pull this at any point or modify it, increase or decrease it. I think there is some sense of certainty and having it extended. Remember, we ran into a problem with hiring when we were 2 years into it, and we had staff saying they didn't want to hire people because it only existed for another 3 years. So we've already played that dance. And we don't need to answer that now. We're just directing staff on what to bring back.
Thanks, Greg, or Councilor Parker. Jeff, quick question for you. Where are we currently, since the implementation of the $5 maintenance fee, where are we at now, or as homeowners?
We were at, excuse me, 1 second here, I had that. 561 as of July 2022, $5.61.
561, thank you. My one concern about doing it indefinitely is we don't, at least every 5 years, it forces us to have a checks and balances, right? Check in, what's going on? Did we say what we wanted to do? That's my point number one on that. The other point on indefinitely, is there a cap? Does it stop at 7? Does it stop at 8? Does it stop at 12? Like, where, indefinitely is a long time. Now, if we come up with a different source, i.e. end of the urban renewal agency, a park and rec district, i.e. through the creation, Capert finally gets that approved, whatever, does that then shift that into something else and it goes away? I think determining the cap piece would be part of that indefinite piece. In terms of like, what are the funds for? Is it staffing? Is it maintenance? Is it growth? I think it's got to be all three of those. I mean, we're not going to, I think to your point, when I asked the question, Jeff, you said we're I think at a state of good parks in terms of where we're at, and so, and I think based on the study from the park maintenance piece or the park master plan piece, the things that will get us there are on the books, right? Upgrading Wade Park, the improvements at Maple Street, community park upgrades, like all those things that we've been talking about, push that needle from a good position on our parks to, very good to even, I think a high level of service for our parks in that regard. So I think it's a balance of all three, right? I don't think we pigeonhole it for one or the other. I think it's got to be a balance through the budgeting process of how do we use those funds now going forward. So maybe I don't know if that's a name change to the fee to, just a parks fee. I don't know, but those are my nickels worth. Councilor Spoon.
Yeah, I think that might be a good thought too, to really have the name be more representative of its intent. I think that would be helpful. My question is, I guess, and maybe this is some confusion on my part, when we use park maintenance fees for things outside of staffing in the past, has the first line been to see if that project qualifies for SDCs? Because I guess I've seen some discussion about projects we fund through the park maintenance fee that I've wondered, would that qualify for SDCs? Is that the first line of defense that we use to make sure that the park maintenance fee, obviously use the most restricted source of funds first? So if you have some thoughts on that.
Let me take a stab, and Jeff or Joe as well, maybe. Yeah, anytime there's a project is going to qualify, it has to be growth related or to expand capacity. We're usually going to look at STCs first, and we've still got a good fund there. So I think where we've used the parks maintenance fee, and maybe the description is a little bit confusing, but it has been used for staffing to support the staffing maintenance. It basically supplements our general fund and has added some staffing capacity. And then the deferred maintenance piece, and I think Jeff mentioned this in the presentation, is those types of items that wouldn't usually be qualified for SDC. So those are things where you've got a playground structure, a picnic shelter, something that already exists. You can't rebuild something with SDCs unless it's going to expand capacity, which usually just a replacement item. So we've used those. That's what deferred maintenance typically is things where you have to replace equipment or items or, sprinkler systems that are outdated or something like that. So is that?
It
that
does.
make
When we
sense?
did the picnic shelter at Locust Street, did we pay for that with park maintenance or was that SDCs? Because I guess I was under the impression that was park maintenance, and I kind of always thought that could have been SDCs because there was no shelter there and could make it usable during different weather. That's an example of like a project that I'm just wondering. And maybe my ask is really not that you know all this right now, but when we go to the ordinance phase, can we get a list of things the park maintenance fee has been used for? I think that would be helpful guidance.
And a clear definition on what capacity is. Because I would think that adding a picnic shelter would be adding capacity.
Yeah.
Because it's adding capacity of time you
That
can
would
use
be
it.
a qualifying
Exactly.
item. I don't recall. I'll have to look into that, and I can't answer that question
Yeah.
right now. But yeah, that's a very good example. And we do understand what you're saying, and that would be my direction would be to look at it that way
Okay.
going forward if we haven't already done that in the
Yeah,
past.
I'm not opposed to using park maintenance fee for things outside of staffing. I just would like to know that we're looking at the most restricted source of funds first, and then moving to this, which has far fewer restrictions. So when we get to the ordinance phase, if we could get a list of things we've used kind of this park maintenance fee for, and I know that may be hard because it just goes into general fund, but the way that I know like our Parks and Rec Advisory Board talks about it, and you know what I mean, I've kind of heard that phrase used. So I guess some projects that have been funded through general fund as opposed to SDC is my ask.
We can do that.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I may add a couple other comments to just some of the other parts of the discussion here. So yes, we'll bring back that information. I think what we were hoping for out of the work session this evening is maybe some consensus around what your preference would be, so we could bring you back the appropriate ordinance, whether that's the 5 years or there've been some discussion about potential for indefinite. I think it helps us to bring you back something that's very straightforward, and we can get an action item on that. So if there's a potential to get that consensus for us, and then I was going to also mention the 5-year discussion, and I think even though that would go past the anticipated closure of the urban renewal district, there, with the way that tax collection works, is even when the district closes and things roll into, our general fund will increase because of the increased property tax base. There'll be a lag in there, so it actually that might not have been the intent of what the Parks and Rec Board was looking at, but I would suggest that might actually be a positive benefit of that as well.
Thanks, Scott. For the group up here, I would refer to, in the packet that Scott passed out at the beginning of the work session, there's a couple of pages referring to the deferred maintenance piece for the 16-17 budget cycle that lists some of the lists all the parks and potential amount of hours it takes to handle or clean up those parks and whatnot. So I think that that's a starting point to understand the maintenance picture of a lot of our parks, and what does, Artisan Gardens at 276 hours, that's monthly, correct?
That's deferred.
Right, that's total deferred time.
Correct.
Right, so there's that piece. So
Pardon me, sir, annually.
annually, thank you. So I distilled it down to, I think, 3 things that we need to clarify. If we want to go a 5-year or indefinite. And then if we want to wait until there's, or until another source is identified and moved on. And then do we want to put if it's indefinite or even at the 5-year, do we put a cap on it or not? And then how do we want to use the funds? So expansion, maintenance, staff, all 3, none of the above. So you got a comment and I skipped over you and I apologize.
No problem. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ordinance 1466, like 5 years ago, I was one of the 3 no's. Everybody knows that, and everybody knows why. Thank you for acknowledging that, Councilor Parker. I think this is absolutely something that should have been referred to the voters, and I still do. However, I also know I don't have the votes up here to sustain that idea, so I'm trying to make this less bad. And I think that indefinite is the worst idea possible, because going forward, we have no control over future councils, and I don't know of any government that's ever repealed a tax. There might be one, but I'm pretty sure this won't ever go away if we make it indefinite. So I would want it to sunset with the sunset of the URD, but Scott did make some good points about the lag in taxes. So I would absolutely say it should not go more than 5 years. That being said, I do wish it would go to the voters, but I know that I don't have the votes up here to make that happen. So I absolutely do not want to see it go indefinitely.
Okay, thank you. You have thoughts on capping it or not capping it, or?
Cap it where it's at.
I'm shocked by that statement. Not really.
No, I know you're not.
So those three seem to be the things that we need to distill down for staff to come back to us. Are there any thoughts or comments on all those, one of those, none of those?
I want to check on whether staff understands. Okay.
I'm trying to distill down. So do we want to go indefinite or a 5-year in terms of direction to bring back to us, or so I guess that's my first question.
I would think that we need to have that discussion within the discussion of an ordinance. This is a work session right now. And I think the actual policy decision should be made at that meeting, that staff can give us options at that time.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that that policy discussion will happen with language in front of us. So to help write that ordinance, I think we should go with the 5-year. Like Mr. Mayor said, gives us an opportunity for checks and balances. In 5 years, we can decide then if we want to make it permanent. I'll be a no then too if I'm still here. But at any rate, it gives us the opportunity for discussion at that point. And we'll also know more about what those numbers look like when the URD closes. We'll have a better idea of what our general fund budget is and if we need to go forward with it. So I think writing the ordinance as a 5-year would be the way to bring it to us, in my opinion, for what it's worth.
Counselor Spoon?
It seems to me that we may be split on preference. So while I know it's more work, it may behoove us to have staff write it up both ways. Without Counselor Banks here, I don't know that we can really get a consensus one way or the other for a staff preference. So it would seem like probably having it written both ways, and then when council is in full attendance, I think if we tried to get consensus now, we would get a split consensus would be my guess. And so I'm not sure that without that 6th member of council, we can really give staff that. I think we should probably have them come back with both. And I apologize for the fact that it's more work, but it seems like that might be the best course of action to me.
That's fine. We can do that.
I can make it easy, though. You know, a sunset's easy to just remove, so indefinite just means removing any date whatsoever.
Well, then I guess discussion on the funds, on how they want to be used. Do we want to, I mean, this is about the park maintenance fee in its entirety. So based on what I'm hearing is, yes, we want to see it continue. Now it's just a matter of how it continues. Am I seeing that as an affirmative head nod of, because that's also part of this conversation, to at least staff to bring back, yes.
So I guess the question that I would have is for Jeff on that, how it's been used for staffing and if for 2 positions. And so in order for it to be used for something else moving forward, we have to either find more money or cut a staff position, correct? To use that money for something besides continuing those 2 staff
I
positions.
believe that was one of the options, yeah.
Well, if I may, yeah, just to clarify a little bit more, it's been, the ordinance is actually written in a way that it gives us a good bit of flexibility. I think it's called a maintenance fee because it allows us to use it pretty broadly for parks maintenance purposes, and we've used it we've supplemented some staffing, but we've also done some of that deferred maintenance work. So it's been used for both, just to be clear about that. And there's, right, is that
Correct.
okay? And unless we changed the language in the ordinance other than just the date of extension or anything else you'd want to change, it would remain with that flexibility to use it. And it basically becomes a supplemental revenue into our general fund for the parks program, and it's used that way.
So I guess then, with that in mind, like, I mean, being that the maintenance is pretty broad, right? What additional things could we use it for that we're not currently using it for if we change it from parks maintenance fee to parks fee? Or is that just a new word, or just
I think it's
changing of the
just
word?
mostly semantics, maybe just it gives a little more clarity around it, that it's,
Okay.
I think maybe the differentiation would just be that it has been used for some construction projects to supplement those as well.
Yeah.
The language, the ordinance allows for that. I think the title might suggest it's a little more restrictive than it is.
I think my preferences would be to continue using it the way that we've been using it. And, you know, I kind of side with Tracy on the you know, how this should have been done. I wasn't on the council back then, so I'm not to blame. But there's two words that really scare me and one of those is indefinite and one of those is perpetuity. Those two words really scare me, and so I know it would be really easy to get lost if it was indefinite or in perpetuity. So I would be in favor of putting a timeline on it, but you know, we can talk about that later.
So Jeff, you've used the park maintenance fee to add 2 full-time people.
Correct.
How many seasonal?
We have 4 at this point right now.
Have you used it to buy equipment to be able to do
We
park
bought
maintenance?
the equipment. I kind of have a real quick
Oh, that would be great.
rundown of what we've actually used the fee for.
Perfect.
So in 1819, we did a lot of deferred building maintenance, and we started our hiring process. You know, just because we got the money right then, it had to build, we had to grow our department. In 1920, we went with another truck because with more people, we needed more equipment. We did a culvert replacement project at Willow Creek, and we redid the pavers at Legacy Park and playground safety surfacing at Legacy Park. In 2021, we started the process of the locust covered picnic shelter, and we redid the basketball courts at South Locust Park and the restroom roof there also. I think there was also a couple garbage cans added. Currently 21-22, we were still in the midst of the locust shelter that's still ongoing at this point. And I think pickleball, Jerry, correct? Did we had some money? Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff. Counselor Spoon?
Yeah, I guess this is where like the picnic shelter for Locust Street and pickleball, I would think we could have argued increased capacity and we could have used a more restricted funding source. So I hope that we take that into consideration moving forward, because I would really I have no problem using the park fee for more than just staffing, but my priority would be to continue keeping staffing on pace so that we continue. I mean, we just did a master plan. The community is clearly very hungry for park growth. And I think it's critical that it doesn't matter how many trucks we have and if we don't have parks to service, right? And I think the priority is to continue growing. So if that's a staffing question, I mean, that's for staff to decide. But as long as we utilize the parks fee in a way that strategically allows us to grow our park system, whatever that looks like, I'm comfortable with that. If that's staff, if that's equipment, if that's whatever that looks like, but kind of more than identifying exactly how the fee be used, it be a philosophy about the fee, that the eyes are on park system growth. And then however year to year that looks, that's how it looks. But just prioritizing like pickleball and picnic shelter, I think maybe could have been SDCs, and that would have freed up this general fund money. And so that would be my preference, is to keep a lens on that. And then philosophically, park fee be for park maintenance and park growth.
And just your point is well taken, and that, again, that would be, I would apply that direction, that philosophy in general anyway, but I actually think we ended up using SDCs for the pickleball court.
Can I comment on this?
Yeah, I do believe we used the SDCs because that was that was a capacity growth.
When we were working with our past finance director on this, we were really analyzing the old master plan and being careful that it was in the SDC methodology. So some of this stuff was in there and some of it isn't. So now with the parks master plan being complete, Counselor Spoon, we're on the same page with you on this, on using them restricted funds first. And I think we got a really good plan for it, if that answers your question.
No, and I know you've always had eyes on it. I just think it's a good reminder when you're dealing with two different funding sources and one is restricted and one isn't, to really leverage those to the highest and best use. And I know that you guys are already on that, but yeah, I appreciate that.
Yep. So, Councilor Parker?
Yeah, the fog is starting to lift on part of this because we had this discussion on what is it going to be used for and whether there was some confusion. And our Public Works Director is taking me back to a moment in time before Scott was here, where there was an internal discussion, debate, and sometimes disagreement that this park maintenance fee would only be used for things that needed to be taken care of, past maintenance. That never really seemed to make sense with me, but I remember that was an internal debate on holding funds back out of keeping all of these funds segregated, the general fund versus the park maintenance fee. And there was some belief in staff that the park maintenance fee should only be used for backlogged maintenance. And I don't really think that was the policy direction that we intended on that. It's certainly something we need to clarify. You know, I know our job is Ways and Means to raise the money and provide policy direction. I'm not sure what happened during that breakdown at that time, but I think, Jerry, you're familiar with what I'm talking about, that there was some confusion. And I don't care how staff brings this to us. I'm concerned about outcomes. And we have funds available to build parks, and I think the community is frustrated that we aren't utilizing those. And if we need to find a way to bring our park maintenance in line with our ambitions, then let's do it, however that is necessary.
Well, to piggyback on that, Councilor Parker, too, I mean, the intent was to go from being behind and we won't say bad parks, we'll say moderate to fair parks and bringing them up, which we did. At the same time, we didn't add, I mean, the only park I think we added in that time was Timber Ridge, but that was because of development, not because the council and the park advisory board said, ooh, let's put a park there. You know, and yeah, maybe Dinosaur Park.
Again, a neighborhood park with development.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, neighborhood park with development that we then take care of, right? So part of it was being able to maintain what we had before and show that we can be in a spot to take care of what we have before we add new. So I think that's a question. I mean, are we at that point where we're able to maintain what we have, that we can add a whole new series of parks? Whether that be a dog park or it be, you know, whatever park.
We have some interesting findings, if I may, in our park maintenance plan that's going to be coming up that will clarify a lot of that, so
Oh, okay.
I don't want to speak out of.
We still need some work on this.
Yeah, when the master plan is adopted, it's gonna show the needs of our, to answer your question, Mayor, on that.
Well, if I may, again, Mayor, just one more bit of input here is, so I think this is an excellent policy discussion around what this is exactly what we need to hear is what your policy direction is, and then we can carry that forward as far as how that fee gets utilized. But as a good reminder, every year through our budget process, we're going to talk about how the different revenues are allocated to which program. So it's an ongoing, even if you extend the maintenance fee or the parks fee out for some period of time, that's a revenue source that we then get to talk about each budget cycle, right? So we're going to apply that to this component of our parks program. So as a reminder, you as the policy makers get to review that every year during our budget process, and we talk about that during the process. So we would implement your direction on what your intent would be for the use, and then we would also basically reaffirm that during the budget process each cycle. So.
So just so that, check the barometer here, so what I'm hearing for staff is, potentially, language for both a 5-year and an indefinite. And then bring back how those funds could potentially be used.
And the forecasted URD numbers.
Am I leaving anything out from our conversation? Scott, do you guys have enough to
We do, yeah,
move
that's great.
forward for the next phase of this conversation?
That's what we needed, yes.
Okay. So general consensus is that yes, we do want to see this maybe move on or continue on. It's how we want it to see it continue to move on, potentially.
So
Counselor Inslee.
what I'm hearing is we would bring back to you, I think at the next meeting, we would bring back 2 versions of an ordinance to continue the fee and give you that opportunity to have that policy discussion. We would present the justification of how it gets used. Yes, I should have, by then, I'm actually meeting with our finance director tomorrow to talk about the updated urban renewal projections and give you a little bit of that information. And that will be kind of an ongoing conversation as well, but yeah, we can bring all that.
Okay. Any other questions, thoughts?
I've got one more here, just a numeric question. How much does the park fee, bring in a year?
483,000, I believe,
Okay, nearly $500,000. Okay.
about a third of our budget.
Anything further? No? I think that concludes our work session. I think staff's got the next pieces that they need. Jeff, again, congratulations on the promotion. Maybe. Just kidding. No, Jeff, you've done a great job leading the parks team, and I really appreciate the hard work that you have put into this piece. Your team has put into weathering some tough years on trying to make do sometimes with duct tape and baling twine to make things happen. And we really do appreciate all the work that you and your team do. And I think this is a worth, what's the phrase I'm looking for, Greg? Overdue step for you. So I think it's going to be great. So
Fine, thank you.
be sure to elbow Jerry on a regular basis to,
All day.
all day long. Perfect. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
That concludes our work session. I will take us on a break, and we will be back at 7:30 for our regular city council meeting. Thanks. Good evening, Canby. Welcome to the August 3rd, 2022 regular city council meeting. We have already had a busy evening of Urban Renewal Agency, a work session, and now our regular meeting here for this evening. If you'll please stand for the invocation and pledge of allegiance. For tonight, just a moment of silence, please, just to give thanks for those that have stepped in to protect and serve, and give thanks for things in our community that we should be thankful for. Great, thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Oh, boy. First up here, or second up, I guess, is citizen input and community announcements. I don't have any yellow cards, Melissa. We didn't have everybody necessarily email in for this evening. If in the future you do wish to address the council, you can come in, fill out a yellow card, and address us here, or please send a message into our city recorder, and she will make sure that you get the link to be able to zoom in if that is what you need to do. Next up on our agenda this evening is the approval of the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the consent agenda that includes the minutes of the June 1st, 2022 joint work session of the City Council, Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, and Parks Master Plan Steering Committee, and regular City Council meeting, and the limited on-premises commercial OLCC liquor license for CJ's Eatery 2, Dee Dee's Deli, located at 1477 Southeast First Avenue.
Second.
Great. Motion's been made by Council President Hensley and seconded by Councilor Varwig to approve the consent agenda, which includes the minutes of the June 1st, 2022 joint work session of the City Council, Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, and the Parks Master Plan Steering Committee, and regular City Council meeting, and the limited on-premise commercial OLCC liquor license for CJ's Eatery 2 / Dee Dee's Deli, located at 1477 Southeast First Avenue. Any discussion or comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? It carries 5-0 this evening. Next on the agenda is resolutions and ordinances. The first one we have is ordinance number 1581. An ordinance authorizing the city administrator to purchase technology and services from Passio Technologies of Atlanta, Georgia, and CTS Software of Swansboro, North Carolina. So I'm gonna have, all right, Scott, you can do it.
Go ahead.
No,
Yep.
He's here.
Mr. Wood is here if you
I
want to.
would say if he wanted to come up and, reaffirm what he told us 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I think you received a full report at the last meeting, and Todd Wood, our transit director, is here to answer any questions if you have any. Otherwise, we're just recommending second reading.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion. I move to pass ordinance number 1581, authorizing the city administrator to sign a 5-year contract with Passio Technology of Atlanta, Georgia, and CTS Software of Cedar Point, North Carolina for paratransit fixed route software and MDT units for Canby area transit.
Motion has been made by Councilor Spoon and seconded by Councilor Marine to pass ordinance number 1581, authorizing the city administrator to sign a 5-year contract with Passio Technology of Atlanta, Georgia, and CTS Software of Cedar Point, North Carolina for paratransit fixed route software and MDT units for Canby area transit. Roll call vote.
Council President Hensley.
Aye.
Councilor Marine.
Aye.
Councilor Parker.
Aye.
Councilor Spoon.
Aye.
Councilor Varwig.
Abstain since I missed the last meeting.
Great. That carries 401. Next up on the agenda is mayor's business. Just a couple of quick things. Clackamas County Coordinating Committee meets tomorrow night. The Park and Rec Board did meet last night in a special meeting to discuss the park master plan that has come out in draft form. So there was some additional grammatical type set things that they went through and made sure were corrected. And then they also spent the rest of the evening discussing short range, medium range, and long range planning recommendations that will be included in the draft that we will see for us to discuss at our next city council meeting on the 17th. So it was very productive conversation. I think there's some great recommendations coming out of it. So I'll be anxious to get that and have that conversation as a group. Coming up, it's early in the month, but get on your calendar. The last weekend of August is Canby's big night out and big weekend. So street dance on Friday night, and then the Swan Island Dahlias and car show and all sorts of great events going on that weekend. So mark your calendars for the last weekend of August. A reminder that we have a new start time for our council meetings in September. So the first meeting in September will start at 7 o'clock, not at 7:30. So make note of that. And then he's left for the evening, but he was here earlier. I just wanted to congratulate Jeff Snyder, who is our parks lead, who's been promoted to public works supervisor. So congratulations to Jeff Snyder and to our city staff on, again, developing talent within the organization and moving it up. It's critical right now in the staffing situations and whatnot, but just shows the leadership that we're developing here in our city. So I think Jeff will do a great job and wish him all the best. So that concludes what I have for now. I'll have more at the next meeting later in August. So councilor comments, liaison reports. Councilor Spoon, anything?
Just a couple of quick notes. I wanted to acknowledge the Canby Arts Association. They threw a really fabulous art event in Waite Park not that long ago, and it's so good to see some of those organizations come back and reactivate and get community events in play. And I know that we have several more coming. FOB is going to do Oktoberfest in Waite Park this year, and it's just really exciting to see those community events. So if you're interested in hosting something or helping that kind of program of events grow, I'd really encourage you to reach out to staff about what you can do to utilize Waite Park, what that looks like, and I would just love to see more and more events like that come back to town. Bridging Cultures had to cancel their last Saturday in the Park due to extreme heat. The next one will be August 13th. So look for that one. And then while we quickly approved the Paseo technology this time, if you are a bus rider, a CAT rider, and you did not watch the last meeting, I really encourage you to reach out to CAT about what new technologies and improvements are coming, because it's exciting. It's going to make transportation in Canby much more rider friendly. It's joining us in the 21st century, the 22nd century, and 21st century. And I'm just really excited about that work. So if you're a CAT rider, reach out to CAT. I'm sure they'll do some trainings and some further education, but there's a lot to be excited about there.
Great, thank you. Councilor Parker, are you?
Yes, I've got a couple of things. First of all, on the 21st century, actually this week was the birth of George Jetson.
Yes, it was.
So for your fellow nerds out there, important community news. To piggyback on what Sarah said about the Arts Association, this was not a city event. We helped and participated in that sort of thing. But I think it shows a maturation of a community when the city doesn't have to do everything. And this, we've got Slice of Summer, we've got this Arts Association, and like you said, this is a healthy, vibrant community when we've started some things and now we've got people on their own doing that. I did have one other thing to talk about. Yes, Mayor, you and I'd like to talk to you about the Historic Landmark Commission's meeting the other night, where they gave a presentation on their consultants' work about a level 1 survey of historic properties. It was a rather lengthy thing, but it is significant, and I'm not going to be able to capture the significance. So I'd like to talk with you about perhaps inviting Chair Jarosh back to give a 5 to 10 minute presentation on that. This group is so cool. They go out and get all their grant monies, and they have been able to put together some historic information that is going to save us some money in the long run when we get to the part of the comp plan revision on our historic properties. So that's great. A couple of us attended, finally, new paragraph, a couple of us attended the Chill and Grill with the police. I was worried that it was going to be too hot for people to turn out. It was a great turnout. And two things in particular. One, I love the fact that we have a bilingual police force. And in particular, Jose Gonzalez going around in his ridiculously oversized chef hat and speaking to members of the community in their own language. I was at one table and the kids just lit up hearing someone speak to them in their own language. That was one. The other is I was able to capture on video our chief of police in the dunk tank getting dunked for the first time. I posted this to Canby now. It's now over 2,000 views. And I think there is something endearing about the head of your police force being a good sport on that sort of thing. So thank you for that.
Great. Thank you, sir. Council President Hensley.
It's only the 3rd of the month, so see you first tomorrow. Traffic safety is next week, so I'll have a report next time.
Great, thank you. Council Farway.
Hello. As you can notice on the top of your agenda, we are now programmed under Willamette Falls Studios. So CTV is done. So I'm not sure 100% what my liaison role looks like for that. So I don't have a report, except to say that Willamette Falls Studio is programming our meetings now. The Northside Fire Station is open, running, and staffed. So I know that's been a fun thing coming for this community, and a long time coming. We have fire service and EMS service on the north side of town, so that's great. And then I still need to catch up with the Planning Commission, so I don't have a report for there. I'll have that next time.
Great, thank you. Councilor Marine.
Well, I had the pleasure for the last 2 weeks of entertaining some guests from Germany. The last time they were here was in 2019. And as we walked through town and showed them things that have changed, they were in amazement. It was so apparent, how much different the facades looked and just the general atmosphere of the community downtown that they went away very, very impressed and wished that they came from a city like Canby. So great. I was very proud of our community.
That's great to hear. Thank you. Next up is City Administrator Business and Staff Reports.
Got a couple of items for you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First one is, as has been discussed before, and I know you are all aware of this, but because of the efforts of some of our legislative representatives in this last short session, we were able to receive some money through the ARPA funding, but it kind of specifically went through an ODOT program for roads. So we're receiving just under $3 million towards our Walnut Street extension to 99E project, which is a huge boost to that project, and especially since prices just kind of keep going up on construction, and what we anticipated a cost of a year ago is probably higher. So that really is fantastic. We've talked about that before, but the update to that is we have signed the agreement for that grant with ODOT. It's basically in the process of coming back our way, and at some point in the not too distant future, we'll receive just under $3 million that we'll put in the account for that project. That didn't have to come to council because it's a grant, it's revenue, it's not an expenditure, it doesn't require council approval, but I wanted to inform you that I somewhat recently signed that grant and sent it back to ODOT, so we would get that money coming back to us in the pipeline pretty soon. So that's very good news, and again, thank you to I know some of you were involved in some of that communication with our legislators, and also to our representatives that represent Canby at our state legislature. So big, very, very exciting and big windfall for us. My second and last item is an update on the downtown quiet zone and the Grant Street Arch, kind of the project status, but also want to talk a little bit about a grand opening that we're planning. So we would like to announce that we'd like to invite the community to a grand opening event for the downtown quiet zone and the arch on Thursday, October 6th at 6 p.m. So that is a little ways out, but I'll give you a little bit more information about that. So October 6th, 6 p.m. will be the formal grand opening, even though I'll tell you about the quiet zone starting up pretty soon here. We encourage everybody to attend that event, and we'll coordinate with you, council, mayor and council. The event will feature speeches, unveiling of plaques. That would be 3 historic plaques and 1 commemorative plaque. We'll do a ribbon cutting. We also plan to do a time capsule that will be interred, not entered, interred, like put into the northwest pillar on the Grant Street Arch. We'll be serving some refreshments. As far as the quiet zone part of this, we have worked with the railroad, ODOT, and Lee contractors to complete all of the safety requirements necessary to have a railroad quiet zone. I'm very happy to announce Canby's quiet zone will be officially established on August 21st, 2022. So in just a little over a couple of weeks. We have, a notice has been issued that trains should cease routine sounding of their horns at Elm, Grant, and Ivy Streets crossings in downtown. The quiet zone will effectively silence train horns at those 3 intersections. However, as we want to continue to remind, should a train operator identify a potentially hazardous situation or feel that the increased safety is needed, they do have the right to still blow the horns, but it will mostly reduce and eliminate the horn blowing through those intersections. Earlier this month, the Grant Street Arch received its finishing touches. Kind of one of the final pieces was the putting in the banner pulley system, so we'll be able to easily install community banners without having to bring in our lift truck and kind of do a little, sort of modified method of sticking a banner up there. We've done that a couple of times. So that'll be a nice thing. Additionally, the arch is uplit by lights on both of the pillars that anchor the archway. We can change those for events and for seasons and all those kinds of things. The grand opening is being held in conjunction with the first Thursday night market, where of course our local businesses stay open late. They offer specials and provide entertainment for our residents and our visitors. Our staff will be working to share the grand opening event with our community, with our city boards, committees, nonprofits, and other groups, and just kind of really put the word out about this. The time capsule piece of this, I want to talk about a little bit. We've been doing some promoting of that, receiving suggestions for what to put into the time capsule. We're continuing to welcome those, including at some events, including the upcoming Big Night Out. Mayor, you mentioned that earlier. So we'll have some kind of a display that will say, hey, give us your ideas on what you think we should put in this time capsule. We'll do that at the September first Thursday night. So the reason for wanting to kind of make sure we have enough time for the grand opening being in October is we need a little more time to put everything together. That project obviously took longer than we anticipated, but we also want to give time to promote that we do get good input on the time capsules. Furthermore, as far as the time capsules go, I think it was Councilor Spoon that maybe suggested to, I don't know if it was on the dais or to staff, but we thought it was a good suggestion that another addition to the time capsule would be that we would request from mayor and council that you might each want to consider providing us a letter. And that would be written to put into the time capsule, perhaps something about the date, where we're at now in our history, but also maybe something to the future city councilors that you might want to encourage them to think about or something like that. But we will be reminding you of that and asking you if you'd be interested in considering writing a letter to put into the time capsule. Again, we're encouraging ongoing input about that from the community. And if anybody has any questions from the community about that, you can reach out to Jamie Stickle, our Economic Development Director. That concludes my report, unless you have any questions about any of that.
I have we have a comment.
Okay, all right.
mostly.
We have
One-
time to talk about this, so
No,
that's
we
good.
do. I'm so thankful. First off, I'm elated at the Quiet Zone piece. I think it's fantastic. I will sit there with a lawn chair that day with a cooler and see how many trains actually lay on their whistle or their horn. I'm just kidding. I won't, but I'm glad that we're almost there. New habits need to be developed and formed, and we'll cut the railroad some slack.
I'm sure some business owners will be counting for you.
I'm sure they will be.
I know one in particular who really not.
I like that
And a few
we
others.
after the fair.
Regarding the dedication and grand opening of the Arch and Time Capsule, October 6th is the League of Oregon Cities Conference for the mayor and council. And so I believe many of us have signed up to attend
Yes,
that
you
event. So if it's possible, could we maybe move it to the November
Looks good.
first Thursday event for us?
Yeah, we would like you all there.
I mean, we'd like to be there. I suppose we could drive back and forth.
No.
That would be a lot. but,
This was
you know.
part of the purpose of announcing this way in advance, was so we could have any discussion about any issues that you might have with that. So I'm glad that
And
we,
November 3rd gives us another month to
Yeah.
get that time capsule thing done.
yes. And that won't hinder our having those projects done, and everything will be rolling, but it'll just be the official celebration. So yes, we can move that to the first Thursday in November.
Perfect.
I will work with staff on that. Thank you for that.
Nope,
And my apologies that we didn't catch that in the first.
nope, that's okay.
A lot of things happen.
Actually, I did remember one other piece that I would be remiss if I didn't mention about this. K2 TV, Channel 2 out of Portland, has somehow connected with Jamie Stickle, kind of on the communications end of things, as well as the events part of this. And actually, we'll be doing an interview with staff and promoting the Big Night Out event piece of things, and some of our other local activities and things happening in Canby. I think they're going to promote some of the happenings at the upcoming annual fair. So just be aware that there will be some publicity, and it'll be running somewhat regularly in some different shows on K2 that they'll be promoting Canby. And I think that's wonderful, so.
Yeah, no, thanks for that heads up and reminded me that I had a few, so where I work, a number of the people that I work with and for know my capacity here in Canby, and they slip things underneath my office door. And one of those was a flyer or an advertisement in a magazine that they saw promoting the Swan Island Dahlia Festival coming up. And so it was from a Beaverton or Hillsborough magazine. So kudos to Swan Island if they're buying ad space out there. It's getting recognized. But yeah, I mean, definitely we will take some of those key publicity pieces for sure. So
And that actually, I just looked at my notes again, and I want to give a shout out that collaboration and that connection piece for the publicity came through the Mount Hood territory, which is Clackamas County's tourism arm. So we somehow had a connection point there that brought that ability to do some nice publicity for our city. So.
great. Thank you, Scott. Appreciate it. Second opportunity for citizen input? No? Okay. Action review.
All right, you have approved the consent agenda and adopted ordinance number 1581.
Great, thank you. Before we take a motion to adjourn, I just want to thank Joe and Melissa for your tremendous amount of work over the last couple of weeks. We've had some extenuating circumstances, and I do appreciate the two of you and your team and all that you've been keeping going. So thank you very much for that. I really do appreciate you guys. So let us know how we can stay out of the way. I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor? Anyone want to hang out? Seeing none. Canby, we are adjourned. Have a good night. See you on the 17th.